Your first meeting in March of 2014. I will call this meeting to order and ask you to stand with us as we recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ollie, would you take the roll, please? Holly?
Can you close the...
Sorry, Holly?
All councilors present and a quorum has been declared, with Councilor Gillespie previously requesting to be excused.
Thank you, Holly. With that, we'll go to the next item, which is the agenda approval. Are there any changes or modifications, Holly?
There is not.
Council, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, if there's no other changes, I'll make the motion. We approve the agenda with the excuse of Councilor Gillespie.
Second. I have a first and a second. Start voting, please. I need one. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Holly. And with that, we'll go on to citizen comment. I have 4 cards here, and we will start with Mr. Larry Brown, please. Thank you for being here, Larry.
Thank you. I just had brief comments on the RV project and the KPP project. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail myself because it's still unsettled. I think we all know what the possibilities are now.
Larry, would you please identify yourself?
I'm sorry, Larry Brown, live in Alamosa County, own the green spot. And anyway, if it goes the route that we don't have the RV park, I feel it's a loss of a huge potential economic development possibility that we've let slip through our hands. If it does go the KPP route, we certainly don't want that project to fail. If it goes that way, we want it to be successful. At the same time, I feel very strongly as a business person in the community that it should support itself. I would be very much opposed to the city or the county having to support it through tax dollars in any way. So I hope that thought would be given, if it does go that route, I hope that a tremendous amount of thought would be given to making sure that it didn't happen, that the county or the city became the entities through our tax dollars that have to support that. If it goes that route, we want it to succeed and be beautiful. If it goes the RV route, I think we'll be better off economically.
Thank you, Larry. The next card I have is for Ruthie Brown. Thank you for being here, Ruth.
Hi, Ruthie Brown. I give you the old spiel that I sleep in the county, but I live in Alamosa. Anyway, I'm going to be a little bit stronger than my husband, Larry, and that's just par for the course. It's been a really long summer, fall, and early spring about the RV resort, and we have supported our great friends and neighbors, Dan and Carol Russell, through thick and thin, and it's been brutal. The settlement or potential settlement left us sick. Not even so much for Dan and Carol because they're strong and they'll survive and they'll maybe find another project if KPP buys this property, but sick for our town, for the economic development. And if all of you would go downtown and talk to the businesses and see how rosy it is right now, whatever you see on national TV is not necessarily true in downtown Alamosa. That being said, if KPP buys the property, and it's sad that I keep thinking what we could do with $400,000 above and beyond what Dan paid for this property. But I wish him success, but I do not want to subsidize it. As a business, as a taxpayer, I think of the high school building the stadium, and yet in the last 2 weeks I've been approached 5 times for donations for programs at the high school. I don't quite get that, and I'm not the only one. We don't have money to subsidize it, and I personally do not want the city or the county to do in-kind, mow weeds, and I will also say that I speak for at least 40 businesses that I've contacted so far. So I'm not here alone. Larry's not here alone. We're not going to get a lot of people here on the bandwagon, but if they build it, let them build it. Let them do what I've had to do in my business and treat it as a business and pay taxes and be self-sustaining. So I think the city of Alamosa has a lot on their plate to take care of what they already have, and I'd like to see some projects done better and that sort of thing. So you don't have the manpower, you don't have the money, so that's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Next up is Catherine Saib. I don't know how to pronounce that last name. Would you please come up and pronounce it for us? Thank you for being here, Catherine.
That's okay. Half the time I can't pronounce it either.
Could you tell us?
My name's Catherine Semblem, the owner of OurDeafDogs.com. You've probably seen me pedaling around town on a blue bicycle with 2 yellow dogs. I'm kind of a mental case that way. And I'm really nervous, so bear with me. I want to talk about putting up, keep it fresh, I guess, putting up a dog park in town. I think it would be a really great idea. There have been a group of us getting together since about September, informally in somebody's backyard. The humans have a great time. The dogs have a great time. You know, we are responsible owners. We run around and pick up the poo and, you know, do all the responsible owner things. And I just think, you know, you can't have a town without people, and you can't have people without dogs. You know, 75% of households in the United States have a dog in them, or 2, or more, in some cases. And I just think it would be a very sort of hospitable, welcoming message to send as a city to newcomers, to people who are dog owners in town and don't, you know, either live in apartments, don't have a backyard, and want to let their dogs play, which keeps them from like getting into the garbage and generally acting like idiots at home. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of keep that fresh in the minds of the council. I think, and please tell me when to stop. There may be a perception that there has to be this fancy, you know, expensive thing. I don't know if anybody's been to the dog park in Salida. It's basically as big as maybe the post office parking lot, you know, that fenced-in area there. It's not big. There's no running water. There's not even benches, really. It's just this rocky, fenced-in area. I think they have poo bags, but that's it. It doesn't have to be something fancy. And I think in our little weekly gathering in this backyard, we've had, I think our record to date is 18 dogs and maybe 10 people. It's once a week. Like I said, we all have a blast. We're going to see an explosion soon because that young man in the pink shirt back there, Jerry White, has been out like crazily drumming up business for us. So anyway, I just wanted to add my voice to the chorus of people wanting this thing, and I really am looking forward to being able to offer this as a citizen of Alamosa. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Catherine. We may have a follow-up by Parks and Rec, but the next card I have is for Dan McCann. Thanks for being here, Dan.
Dan McCann, 1809 Sunset, Alamosa. I want to congratulate Coach Lewis Wilson, the coach at the Adams State men's basketball team, for putting a great display last night. And if any of those fans were disappointed, they should go home and kill themselves and make the world a better place, because it just went back and forth and back and forth. And Coach Wilson really knows his stuff. He's really a good guy. He's one of the best friends I've ever made being in this community. Coach Lewis Wilson is a class act. And everybody does the best they can. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. That's why you play the game.
Thank you very much, Dan, and I hope nobody takes you literally, but anyway. Next up on the agenda, follow-up. Is there any follow-up from staff by any chance?
Several months ago, when we were in the fall season, we had heard from some residents regarding dog parks and the desires. And the plan at that time was to, during the slower season for Parks and Recreation, thank you, Eric, is to look at pulling together a focus group to identify maybe some ideal locations, some ideal designs, and all of that. And ironically, a couple weeks ago, we had talked, Heinz and I, about doing that within the next few months. So I'll let Heinz say anything else that needs to come up.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Heinz.
You bet. Yeah, you can put it on your calendars. We're going to have a public forum April 9th, which is a Wednesday at 7 p.m. at the Rec Center. So that at that time we'll discuss those things about location, the amenities, security, segregation of the dogs, size, accessibility, parking, and funding. So we welcome everybody to come from the citizens, and we'll have a chat.
Thank you very much, Heinz. Catherine, I hope you can attend that. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll have that out on the Facebook, all our media outlets, and also through our mass emails from the Rec Center. So, okay.
Thank you. Any comments from council? We're good. All right. Next up is ceremonial items, and we will have Officer Oakes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let everybody get up here
Chief,
before I
thank you
start.
for being here as well. Good to see you back there.
Well, tonight we're here to recognize 3 of our officers for their hard work and commitment to keeping our community safe. We're going to present them with an award for their actions on a specific night, and I'll tell you a little bit about that before we get into it. On September 14th, 2013, at about 1:30 in the morning, Officers Kinshu, Colson, and Corporal Spangler were outside of Weekend's Tavern down on 1st Street when they were contacted by an employee. The employee informed them that a male patron inside the bar had a gun on his person and was causing problems. Corporal Spangler was the supervisor, the senior officer of the 3. He made a decision that because of the environment inside the bar and the number of patrons, it would probably be best to have this subject come out and speak with them outside rather inside the crowded bar. Like I said, it's a Saturday, 1:30 in the morning, a pretty busy time of day. He then asked the employee to assist and have that subject come outside to speak with the officers. The employee did so, and once he was outside, the 3 officers made contact with him. At this time, he was identified and recognized by the officers as an escapee from community corrections. Corporal Spangler spoke with the subject, and as he did, Officer Kinshu observed the subject pull a gun from his back pocket and begin to raise the gun in the direction of the officers. Corporal Spangler and Officer Colson took immediate action and controlled the resistive subject. All 3 officers then took the subject into custody without further incident. As a result of Corporal Spangler's decision to contact the subject outside, the keen observations of Officer Kinshu and quick actions of all 3 None of the officers nor any of the patrons of the establishment were injured. As officers, we are expected to encounter dangerous subjects and deadly force situations. But when we do, these situations can easily become deadly. On this night, it's obvious that the officers' training, quick thinking, and appropriate response allowed everyone, even the suspect, to walk away from this situation. So tonight, this is the reason we're here. The command staff and the Alamosa Police Department would like to present each of these officers with a commendation award for their actions. So Captain Jackson. What we have is a award. It says, what does it say, Cap?
Across the top of it says Medal of Commendation, Alamosa Police Department, and it's accompanied by the orange bar that they will wear on their uniform. Start off with,
Very nice.
And Jamie Colson is one of our newest officers, and one of the proud achievements we've made by hiring the right people. He's a hometown boy, and we're very proud of him.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank everyone, family, friends, members of the community, for supporting us. To be awarded this medal, to be awarded a medal like this, means a lot to each of us. Just to receive a medal, that means we are doing our job, protecting and serving this great community. The training, education, and brotherhood we have at the Alamosa Police Department makes situations like this one much easier to deal with. When a call comes in that a male has a gun in a crowded bar, training, education, and brotherhood goes into effect immediately. I know I speak for Corporal Spangler and Officer Kinshu when I say that the situation was taken care of peacefully with no innocent citizens, officers, or suspect being hurt. Each of us all will continue to do what we love by protecting and serving this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Colson. Thank you, gentlemen. Council, do you have any comments?
Mayor, I had one. I'd just like to thank the chief and his staff for the training that they put in with these officers that continue to protect our community and all the hard work they do.
Rusty?
Yeah, I'd like to thank these guys and all of our officers. We enjoy our quiet little community, and we don't always realize what happens at 1:30 in the morning. And it's the good job that you guys do that keeps us from being in the national spotlight if that type of incident happens. And we do appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilor Coleman?
I also would like to thank each and every one of the officers who received the awards tonight, but also all of the officers. I see you patrolling our city night and day, and there's definitely a positive presence. So keep up the fantastic work, and thank you so much.
I also would like to thank you for your patrolling of our city. I've had dealings with a few, Mr. Jackson, on an incident in my neighborhood that was really taken care of pretty nice. And we really appreciate your hard work, and keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Council, and the only thing I can do is just reiterate what Council has said. We're very proud of our police department. The way you handle incidents like that is a true reflection on the training and education that you have and the consideration you have for for even the folks that are probably not as law-abiding as they should be. So thank you so much for that. We really appreciate you. Next up, we've got consent calendar A. Approve minutes of the regular meeting February 19th, 2014, and accept XL Energy Vegetation Management through the Colorado Tree Coalition grant.
Mayor, I wanted just to make a comment on the XL Energy Vegetation Management, the tree grant. You know, there's a lot of times that this consent calendar A just goes, we approve it and really don't talk about certain items on there. And this is a good one because we're getting $3,000 to do some tree planting at one of our parks there and removing some trees that take up a lot of water. So I wanted to thank Heinz for going out there and getting that grant, and those trees will look great there at the park.
Thank you, Charlie. Rusty?
Also, I think, agree with Charlie, Heinz put in a bunch of time to get this done. Tree Board did an excellent job, and his crew always does a good job helping plant and keeping these trees going. So thanks, Heinz, and thanks to the Tree Board. And with that, I move we accept consent calendar A as presented.
I've got a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. I second.
Start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Now we'll move on to regular business. Presentations from an outside agency. We have Character Education Project by Mr. Ilario Ricky and Mr. Andy Levere. Thank you for being here, gentlemen.
I'll take that. Thank you for having us. It's not very often that I'm the shorter one in the groom, so.
Please tell us your names and addresses, please.
I'm Andy Levere, 815 3rd Street, Alamosa, Colorado.
And I'm Eladio Ricky, 906 Weber Court, Alamosa, Colorado. Gentlemen, thank you very much for having us here tonight, and thank you to staff for allowing us to be here. Andy and I have both spent some time in the classroom as public education teachers at the high school level, and am I still on? Okay. And during our time as high school teachers, we've seen a lot of focus being put on things like good grades, better test scores, curriculum development. But what we've also seen, having worked in low-income communities, is a lack of development in some of those softer skills that we feel like make people into successful people. And that's kind of what we want to talk to you about tonight, and then talk about what our project looks like, where we're at this point in the project, and present some information that we think would be helpful to the City Council in terms of where this stands from an economic standpoint. Monday night we met with the Board of Education and presented our project there in detail. We enjoyed a lot of support from the board. 6 out of the 7 people vocally endorsed the project and said that it is something that they would like to see in the schools next year. So we were very encouraged by that. Andy's been working as a teacher in the high school here to get teachers on board with this project, and I'm going to let him go ahead and talk a little bit about how that's gone so far.
Okay. So what we're really talking about is not changing anything that the teachers are already doing, not changing the curriculum, but infusing some core values, some character education pieces in those lessons that are already happening. And the reason for that is, in recent years, recent decades, that schools have really focused on just the academic piece, and it's federal mandates, it's state mandates, it's district mandates, and it's, high stakes testing. And, there was a day and age where kids got these character pieces at home. And the pieces that we're trying to focus on are things like grit, finishing what you begin, enthusiasm, self-control, optimism, gratitude, social intelligence, curiosity, things that students that succeed, they probably already have those. You know, they're getting them from home, from church, from athletics, from music, from things like that. But there's a bigger segment of our population that's just not getting them at all. And it's getting less and less of our students that are receiving those, and a greater number of our graduates that have that. Eladio and I have talked that when he graduated from high school in 2007, he was one of 12 4.0 GPA graduates. And, you know, we've talked several times about, well, who else is there in that class that's still here? And we're still scratching our heads because I think he's about the only one. You know, we recognize some officers here tonight, Officer Spangler, Officer Coulson. Those people are the exception. And so some people will say, you know, we are producing top graduates. We are producing some really good students. We are, and I'm not doubting that at all. But the students that you know, graduate with those character pieces, that have those good academic pieces, for the most part, go off to a university or to someplace, and they don't come back. And so in terms of the economics, our workforce here isn't tapping into most of those top graduates and the kids that naturally have those character pieces. And so we're talking about a plan that will focus on those character pieces as well as the academic pieces. Go ahead.
We also think that the timing of this project and trying to implement it at this time is really the right time to do it. We've seen recently developments in the school district that focus around athletics. Some of those projects are still ongoing, with talking about a baseball complex, talking about gymnastics facilities, things like that. And in talking with people in the community, in talking with people that run businesses, in talking with people in the education system, they're ready to see some type of project that is now focused back on the classroom and what's going on inside, which would affect every single student, not just a smaller group that participates in extracurricular activities.
Well, when we talk to business owners and employers, there seems to be a common theme with them, and they say that we're having a hard time hiring good employees. And when you draw them out into a larger conversation, they'll say, you know, they're on their cell phone a lot. They won't show up to work on time. They won't call in when they're going to be sick. You know, things like you can't cuss in front of employees. You know, things that used to be handled at home or with some other institutions, they're just not getting covered anymore. And we're trying to find ways to put that back into schools.
So a big question that we've answered in the people that we have spoken with is, how are you going to do this, and does it work? Is there evidence that shows that a program like this in public education with an at-risk population, will this work? So the plan, and first off, how we're going to implement it. We're going to take anything that a teacher's already doing, so they have lessons aligned to standards, aligned to the curriculum that has already been developed. We're not going to change any of those lessons, but at the same time, we want these character traits to be something that students see on a very consistent basis. So we're going to work with teachers on a one-on-one basis who have already volunteered and want to be part of this program. So it's not a top-down directive. It's something that we've gone out, talked with teachers. They've said, yes, we want to be part of this program. We want to work with you. And we're going to help them work with them to infuse these character traits into the objectives, into the lessons, and into the assignments that they're already doing. So let's take a quick example of what a standard assignment might look like, or a standard objective, and then let's talk about how we would change it to infuse some of these character traits that we're talking about. So in a science class, a standard lesson might be something like, today we're going to learn about the scientific method. And that in education right now, that's kind of the lesson, and that's where the objective ends. So we're going to change that to say something like, today we're going to learn about the scientific method. Scientists are fueled by curiosity. They design experiments in order to explore new things and investigate questions about the way the world works. Today, your curiosity will be key to designing a successful experiment. So you can see they're going to be doing the exact same lesson that they already would be doing, but we filled that with curiosity and made that something that is a focus as part of that lesson. And then we're going to help teachers refer back to curiosity as part of that lesson so that that becomes something that students are seeing on a consistent basis and then eventually develop as they move forward through the education process. Does this work? So we've looked into researching different places that do it, and we focused on a network of schools across the country that has had a program like this since they got started in the early 1990s. So they've been around close to 25 years, and with a population that is 86% free and reduced lunch, 95% minority, they're beating the national average in high school graduation rate, in students enrolling in four-year colleges, and then students eventually completing their four-year degree. So there is evidence that something like this does matter, it does make a difference, and it does work.
And I think you can look at statistics and numbers and results in a number of different ways. You know, it's one thing to have like a good graduation rate, but it's another thing to look at, okay, of those graduates, what did they go on and do? You know, the X amount of students went on to college, great. Did they get a degree? Did they finish? How long did it take them to finish that? What are they doing with the degree after they get done? And you know, I think students that possess these good character traits, they're going to be successful students, parents, employees, employers, things like that. We were talking that ESPN had a special on University of Florida's basketball team. They've won a couple of national titles recently, and in the interview, the coach was talking about, you know, what do we do to build our program, and he talked mainly about, you know, we try to build really good young men. We try to build people with really good work habits, with good character, and winning is just a byproduct of that. I coach junior high cross country. I'm always going after one of the top spots. There's a state meet. I called the coach of the team that won this year's program called Peak to Peak, and expected to talk about workouts, X's and O's, you know, recovery times, things like that. And immediately she said the exact same thing. We just focus on creating a very good group of people, and winning is kind of a byproduct of that. And so those are the types of things that we're talking about. Another example, too, that Laudo gave you an example with the scientific method. I teach history. This week I was talking about causes of the Great Depression. Typically I'd talk about you know, the stock market and over-speculation and debt and things like that. But when I talked about people were spending too much money, what does that mean? They're taking on too much debt. Great. I took it just a tiny step further by saying it's a lack of self-control. People exercised a lack of self-control, and that they had all these new things. Credit was readily available. They didn't have to take out loans for these things, but they did, and the correction was a Great Depression. You know, optimism, we've talked about this. Optimism is great. Sometimes there can be too much optimism. If I'm talking about the Vietnam War, Lyndon Johnson may have been too optimistic in thinking that America could go in there and win this thing easily. So those are the type of core values that we're talking about.
And Andy brought up the examples with athletics, and then that directly translates to what we're talking about with this project inside the classroom, in that we think if we develop students who have these traits and who are practicing them on a consistent basis, then the good grades and the better test scores and things like that are just going to fall in line, because that's something that people who practice these traits already exhibit.
So again, you know, it's not an approach where we have an extra class where we teach this, we bring in a couple of guest speakers. It's going to be, you know, those things, but also consistently, class after class after class after class, and it's a common vocabulary that they're getting from a number of different subjects, you know, multiple years, year after year after year, class after class after class. And this isn't something that's going to be a quick fix. This is something that's going to take a long time to do, but anything of this magnitude typically takes that type of effort and that type of time and commitment.
One thing when we were kind of talking today, and it seems like today schools, they spend thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on developing standardized tests. I was talking to someone that works in financial aid at Adams State, and she told me that she was on a committee once and saw that the state spends $40,000 to generate each TCAP question. That's just per question, $40,000. So a ton of money is spent on standardized testing, on curriculum development, on better teaching practices. And the assumption that goes into that is that everyone's going to put their best foot forward once those things are in place. Everyone's in the same place to where that's going to work for them, and that money's being spent in a way that doesn't take these things really into account. So we looked at what would be some of the economic impacts of implementing a program like this, and we kind of wanted to share some things that we found with you. Over the course of a year, someone that drops out of high school, over the course of their lifetime, someone that drops out of high school contributes an amount of about negative $5,200 to their lifetime net fiscal impact. So the impact that they have on society really costs society $5,200. You take that and compare it to someone who just graduates from high school, their net fiscal impact is $287,000. So they contribute $287,000 in the form of state, local, and federal taxes to the nationwide economy throughout the course of their lifetime. What we want to point out is that's a difference of $292,000 for every high school graduate. And something else that we noticed, or that we wanted to make note of, is that each year the class of people that drop out, if you take all those people together across the country, that costs the country over $200 billion during the course of that class's lifetime in unrealized tax revenue.
What questions do you guys have so far?
Would you implement this in the middle school and high? Or
Yes. Yeah, the elementary schools, well, actually all of our schools are doing some positive behavior interventions. So this would be geared at the middle and the high school levels.
When we designed this project, we wanted to make sure that it was something that we took on, and we wanted to increase our responsibility as time went on and make sure that we didn't take on more than we could handle. So we know that elementary, the K through 5 schools are already doing a lot centered around positive behavior. We think that grades 6 through 12 is a crucial age where students kind of make a decision that ultimately influences where they go after public education.
I think one of the questions I had was, when do you plan to implement this, and what kind of fiscal challenges are you looking at?
Well, I've already started some of this, and I've talked to a handful of teachers who, think it's a good idea. We'll probably start here this school year, but in terms of like an actual program and implementation, I'd like to start it this coming school year. In terms of financial impacts and things like that, that's going to depend largely on, I guess, the commitment of the school district and exactly how we lay this out. I mean.
So Mr. Lucero, we're going to follow up with another meeting on the 17th of March with the school board, and at their work session, we'll be talking more about the resources that'll be required to fund a project like that with our budget. So we'll go over that with that board on the 17th of this month.
Mm-hmm. And right now, we're just talking with a handful of teachers. Things like this typically don't work when you're made to do that. It works if people volunteer and are on board already. So a lot of it is going to be driven by, the number of teachers that want to get on board with this.
Thank you.
I believe it's very important for cities like ours to retain talented individuals in our community in order for us to grow and in order for us to continue to prosper with people like visions like you two have. I'm just curious to find out what motivated you and inspired you to come back and work in the community once you graduated from college.
Actually, Eladio has a great story, so give him that.
So when I graduated from college in 2011, I went to college at Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington. But before that, I grew up here my entire life. And I was part of a program called Teach for America, which is a 2-year commitment where different people that could potentially demonstrate leadership potential are placed in low-income school districts across the country. I kind of wanted, in being honest, I kind of wanted to go live somewhere else and experience that. As fate would have it, I got placed in Colorado Springs, the closest place that Teach for America places to Alamosa, Colorado. In the 2 years that I was there, I was part of Harrison School District 2, which was making a lot of changes centered around high stakes, standardized testing, a lot around academic performance, and that was really the only focus. My students, from an academic standpoint, did incredibly well, and that was something that I was really proud of. But what I noticed is, coming from a very low income community, there were a lot of other needs besides doing well academically that these kids needed on a daily basis that they weren't getting from anywhere else. I saw that the most consistent time that they had during the day was the 8 hours that they were spending inside our building, but we weren't really doing anything to develop that other side to complement what we were doing academically. So during my second year, the summer before my second year of teaching, I began to do some research on programs like this and put something kind of loosely in place in my classroom going into that second year. The kids had already done a good job academically the first year, but they started to do even better the second year, and I noticed they were exhibiting behaviors that were conducive to them being successful later on, like working with each other, like not being afraid to ask for help, like trying to make connections to what we were doing in the classroom and when they might use this in the real world. So it was really encouraging to see something like that, and that kind of led to wanting to do this for other districts. And I think this was just kind of a natural place to start, being my hometown. And part of Teach for America's mission is you teach for 2 years, and that's been a criticism, is you're only teaching for 2 years. But what they hope is that you go out and make a difference in education from some other type of avenue. And it really is a pleasure to try and do this in the place that I grew up, and the place that that really invested a lot in me. So it really is a pleasure to be able to give back in a small way.
Thank you. Rusty?
Thank you. Yeah, you want teachers to volunteer for this program. What's your projection for volunteer rate to begin with, and then what's your goal for getting 100% buy-in? Is there a timetable?
I don't know if we'll ever get 100% buy-in, but I've approached 5 or 6 teachers, and not one of them has told me no at the high school. But these were people that I, had talked to before, showed some enthusiasm. We had common concerns with them. And so my hope is that we get a core group of teachers that are enthused, that buy into this, and that we can start to show some success, that we can, we can demonstrate, with the data that academics are going up, but also absenteeism is down, tardies are down, fights are down. They're asking better questions. They have better college plans. If I talk to employers of these students, that they're going to say, they show up on time, they're great, they're getting promotions and things like that. And so I think we're going to have to show that the handful of teachers that are doing this are having success, and hopefully success breeds success. Because I don't think that we can make teachers do this. I just don't think it's going to work.
And even if you did, I don't think that it's going to be the most effective. He and I have both spent time in the classroom, and teachers are not lying when they say they do have a lot of responsibility on their shoulders. That is not something that is exaggerated. So I think that what we can do is try and make it part of what they're already doing, so it's not work that's being added to what they're already charged with. And also, in kind of expanding the program and answering the second part of that question, we're looking for about 20% at each building right now, 20% of staff to be on board. That should be pretty easy. Andy's done a great job at the high school already, and we have more than 20% already on board. And then expanding that, what we're looking to do is teachers, I think they take more kindly to what their fellow colleagues have to say and sort of what the recommendation would be from them. So if the 20% of the staff that we have on board has a good experience with this, we expect them to talk with their colleagues that aren't on board right now, and then year to year, we're expanding, we're making it so more teachers are involved, and we're avoiding that you have to do this type of directive.
We've had a couple of visits from the state in the form of a Katie report, comprehensive appraisal for district improvement. I think we did one in 2007. There was a follow-up in 2009. And one thing that came out of that report was, in order to make any serious change in a school, you have to change the culture. You have to create a culture of success. And that's really what we're looking to do here, is create a culture of success in the school district.
As Andy said a little bit earlier, we've reached out to some places in the community. We do have some initial support in that. Like we said, right now, until we meet with the school board on the 17th of this month, we won't know exactly the number of what those resources and what would be needed at that time. But I think one thing that could be really helpful for us as we move forward in this process with the school board and with people and organizations in the community is saying something like, City Council endorses this project, City Council is on board with this idea, because of the weight that kind of carries with each one of you in your positions.
Go ahead.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think it's something that council would be more than willing to consider. So you are basically looking for a letter of recommendation or approval of this project in some form or fashion. Is that what you're looking for at this point in time, or?
At this time, that's what we're looking for, yes, sir.
Okay.
Is this program in place in other schools right now?
Not anywhere in the surrounding area, and it would be a very limited basis in public education. That's actually a good point, a good question, and something else that I'd like to talk about. I think that from the school district standpoint, this would be, I really do think it'd be an excellent, like a PR type thing, in that there aren't very many places that have a program like this. Most schools will do something along the lines of, once a month we'll talk about topics like this. Once in a while we'll go out and do a community service project that maybe 10% of the kids actually participate in, and kind of cover this topic in that way. But no one's really doing this on a consistent basis, other than some private and some charter schools that definitely aren't in this general area.
And a lot of the research is on inner city schools that are failing miserably, where the state just comes in and does a complete takeover, complete transformation. And we're not saying that our schools or our community is failing. I think that we've got some struggles, and when you talk to employers and businesses, they seem to have some common concerns with the people that they're hiring. And so that's why this is kind of a new approach. We're going to take some of those techniques that are being done in your turnaround school districts and try some of those things here in Alamosa. I think 2/3 of America's schools are rural and have declining enrollment, and their towns are experiencing the same things. So we're not here trying to say we have all the answers and that we've done millions of hours worth of research. We're a couple of guys. I've lived here most of my life. He was born and raised here. We're just trying to roll up our sleeves and give this a good attempt. And we've done a decent amount of research, but we're trying to make a positive impact in our community and try something that we think will work.
We appreciate that, gentlemen, and maybe we can ask staff to either decide whether we should do this in a resolution, or just what would staff recommend at this point in time?
Well, one of the things that I think we have in the works for your consideration is a policy dealing with these kinds of endorsements, because we all may think that this is a great idea, and we may tell the school district, hey, we think this is a great idea, but is it our bailiwick to be telling the school district what ought to be happening in education? Is it the school district's bailiwick to be telling us what ought to happen in street maintenance? That's something that that's a discussion, because we have these kinds of things come up. That's a discussion that I think we need to have as a council.
Thank you, Eric. Comments from council?
Yeah, I'm also in education too, and I worked under Annie LaVere last year, and I think this program is awesome. I think we talked last year, Mr. Levere, about how success breeds success, and if this is implemented the right way, I like the idea how you would ask teachers to volunteer for it and not force it upon them. I think that's a great way to approach it, and I think, and in my own personal opinion, we should endorse this and go with it. Help them out.
Anyone else?
I think in order to assist council as you're considering this is staff can always look at the council policy and do a little bit more research and offer you some guidance as well at a later time. But I don't say this to necessarily stop this discussion, but to let you know that there is some additional research we can do on this issue.
Thank you, Heather. Gentlemen, I think you have your answer there. Give us a little time to consider it.
Sure.
And we will let you know what council has decided.
Sure, and we'd like this to be a two-way discussion too. I mean, we're trying to improve our community. We certainly want to take input from the city and hear what you have to say in terms of the direction you want our economy to go, the direction you want employment to go. We want your input on this too. We're trying to make the citizens and the employees and the employers of tomorrow. We want your advice on how to make that happen.
And that's a good point, and that's part of the reason that we're being here. We've reached out to other organizations so that we can ask them, what is it that you're looking for in someone that you might hire in 5, in 10 years? What do you want to see in them? Because we know that that's who we're going to be working with, and we want to cater it towards those places.
A lot of times in education, we're told what to do. The federal government, the state government says, you have to do this, and you feel like your hands are kind of tied. This is kind of a unique approach too, where I think we can say, hey, city council, what do we want education to be like in Alamosa? We have some control over that, so let's create that together.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Have a good evening.
Council, we'll move on to business brought forward by city staff, Public Works. Dawn? We want to talk about ordinance number 2, 2014, an ordinance amending Chapter 8, flood damage prevention to the Code of Ordinances of Alamosa, Colorado. Thank you, Dawn.
As you recall, we had a public hearing on this ordinance at the last meeting. There were some issues with the actual ordinance itself. There's some references in the ordinance that weren't correct. We have gotten those corrected, so we're asking you tonight to pass the ordinance. Questions?
Thank you, Dawn. Any questions of Dawn?
If there's no further questions, I'll make the motion. We approve ordinance number 2, 2014.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Start voting, council. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, council. Next order of business is city manager legal. Consider approval of human resource manager position. Heather?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to open up a little bit to give a little bit of a background on this issue. Normally, with the form of government we have, individual consideration on personnel items is not something that would normally come before City Council. The city manager would normally make those reorganizations, and that would take place during the budget process, and Council would approve the budget process. This item is a little bit unique in that if there is council support for this, it does change the position of the city clerk position that reports directly to City Council. With that in mind, and then also depending on council support, if we would want to fill this position before the budget is another reason to bring this before you at this point in time. As we all know, Judy has announced that she is retiring and moving on to her private business. We're going to miss her, but it is also an opportunity for us to really evaluate if we should fill the position as it currently is, which it almost serves 3 functions, and that's municipal court, the city clerk, and then at this point in time, a significant amount of the human resources functions. When you review the previous budgets and previous goals for the city, it has been highlighted for a while the potential need for a human resources professional. In this year's budget, there is the goal that for the city to become a first-choice employer that provides a professional and legally compliant work environment for employees and empowers them to provide the highest quality for public service for our community. I honestly believe that if we do create this position and fill it with the right person, that we could really move this organization forward in achieving that goal. What I've placed before you and then I've put up for the audience up onto the screen is an overview of what the potential human resources manager would cover. People have different backgrounds and experiences with HR, and that's why I wanted to provide more detail rather than less, but I won't talk too long. Essentially, those items that are in black are those that we are currently doing, and they would just be shifted from the city clerk's office to this position. Those items that are in red would be items that we just currently can't get to at this point in time because of workload, so they would be new items. Those items that are in blue are enhancements, either because this person would be able to focus entirely on HR, or to some degree, some of these we have decentralized right now, and we would be pulling it into one location, which would have some benefits to that. Essentially, we would have the consultation with managers and supervisors. This includes exit interviews, reclassifications, reorganizations, the discipline, review of the HR handbook, and then HR audits. What that actually is this person could go out and visit with supervisors, managers, just at different times to see how they feel things are working, if they have employment issues, if they have questions. It's try to get out more and work with them and make sure that we're preventing problems before they happen. We would continue the employment investigations and coordination. Probably the largest chunk of improvement would be in our training area. This person would either coordinate it or provide the training themselves. We currently do anti-discrimination, but we would also add reasonable suspicion, performance evaluations, supervisory training, civility and diversity, and then also leadership training. We also have the area of risk management. And when you get into some of these areas, not only can this person, if they're doing a very good job, prevent us from having claims, but by evaluating and making changes, they can sometimes save us money on our policies as well. And from a risk management perspective, we would look at improving our safety review committee, looking at trends of what's going on, if we need to do training, if we're seeing a lot of certain types of accidents, those types of things. Also working with citizens and vendors. It's a similar thing with workers' compensation. We would do a better job of monitoring. Are we seeing a lot of back injuries? Are we seeing a lot of other types of injuries, and what do we need to do to prevent that? Administration of benefits is probably going to stay fairly the same as it is right now. Judy's office has really been putting a lot of time into the multiple benefits we have and making sure that open enrollment occurs and that we're keeping those competitive and that employees see them as a benefit. Processing of personal action forms. This is essentially the clerical area. When you get people that either come on board, if they leave, if they get a change pay, it's processing all of that kind of paperwork. The handling and review of performance evaluations. This is another area that if we had more time dedicated to it, we would be able to identify where some of our training needs are, if we have any issues that are going on within the organization, consistency, all of those types of things. Job openings, currently every department handles it themselves to a certain degree except for the background checks. So this is something where the enhancement would be that we're pulling it into one location, having some consistency in how we do it, and offering assistance to the departments on this process as well. You have a lot of the legalese and the regulatory, family medical leave, ADAA, COBRA, fit for duty. These are a lot of areas where this person would know these items inside and out and be able to help supervisors know how to avoid certain situations. The fit for duty is actually something that gets into if someone has a personal injury, not a work-related injury, that before they come back to work, we would ensure that their injury is fully healed and not something that they could re-aggravate while on the job. So then that would turn into a workers' comp injury. So we always want to make sure the employee's safe and that we're limiting our risk in these areas. The pre-employment testing is something that we used to do, but we had to stop for a variety of reasons. But this is something where for those those positions that have physical aspects, we would do certain tests to get a baseline data. So if someone is hired and their back functionality is only at 80% and they injure themselves on the job, we don't have to be required to return them to 100%. We return them to the 80% that they started with. The wellness initiatives, we have done some initial work on this, but it does take a lot more time to then create programs that employees are going to find and value and actually can help keep our costs lower for health insurance. Personnel files, job descriptions. Right now we don't do employee orientation. This is something that we could start. Compensation surveys, and then if we wanted to do employee surveys. This is something where I think organizations as they grow get to a certain point where you can't continue to spread these duties and expect different staffs to become experts at the level we need them to become experts. The letter that was attached to the agenda, I need to add a little bit of information to. At that point in time, I gave a list of how many full-time positions, regular, and those. We actually have 85 full-time, 58 regular part-time, 6 seasonal, and then 72 recreational part-time employees. That puts the city to a total of 221 employees, which is fairly significant to not have an HR person. While talking to Judy about this, we wanted to get a feel for how much of the workload we would be removing from the other locations. And essentially, depending on the time of year, Sharon's position spends anywhere from 20 to 40% of her time doing HR functions, and Judy's position spends about 60% of her time. Now, there are efficiencies when you have a person that it's entirely their job to focus on HR, which when I look at these duties and you look at how much is blue and how much is red, I do think there is still room for them to absorb those new and enhanced items in addition to the almost 100% workload that we would be removing from the city clerk's office. When I do have those conversations with Judy, the natural question that comes up is when you remove those duties, what are those two positions going to do? And I think that's a very fair question. It's something that I think as Judy and her group has evaluated, there are some areas where there can be backfill. It's both in the city clerk and the municipal court areas. Specifically on the municipal court areas, you have to be very careful to make sure your processes are good because there's liability issues if you don't give proper notice and items like that. So there are areas that could backfill. My recommendation is to allow whoever the new city clerk is to come in, assess what that situation. If we are in support of removing the HR functions, let them determine what backfill needs to occur and then what kind of workload still exists type of thing. The reason we may want to consider this as far as timing is when you are trying to attract someone for the city clerk's position, getting the clerk experience and municipal court experience is somewhat unique. If you add the HR on top of it, you're really creating a challenging position to attract someone into. We've been very fortunate that Judy's learned on the job, received her certification, and has grown with this function. Attracting someone into it as it exists now would be challenging. So my recommendation to council would be to support the idea of us creating this FTE. I've worked closely with Amanda to make sure that our 10-year financial projections, this fits into it. We are still healthy. It's not going to strain us. And we would also look at creating a budget to where instead of every department having to kind of pad their budget a little bit because you don't know what turnover you're going to have as far as for processing new hires or advertising, we would centralize some of those functions as well and have a little bit tighter control on the budget process for that as well. So my recommendation, my number one recommendation would be to have support to remove these functions from the city clerk position and create this FTE, and that helps us timing-wise continue with the search process for the city clerk. My second part of the recommendation is if you are open to supporting this position, we could look at filling it before the next budget year. That way, when we do bring someone on board, we can try to alleviate some of that workload as they're going through a learning curve and that type of stuff as well. And I am open to any questions.
Thank you, Heather. Council, do we have any questions of Heather?
I had a couple, since you're removing this from the city clerk, is there any changes in the charter that would probably need to be amended, Eric, or, because does this right now in the charter, it talks about the city clerk?
We don't think so, but we'll definitely look into that.
Okay. Also, is this going to be a department head? Will this person work under somebody else, or how would that work, Heather?
This person would be out of the city manager's office, and they would report directly to me. It would not necessarily be at the department head level, but they would definitely be interacting with department heads.
Sure. So, okay.
When I looked at, when we were trying to figure out what to set the salary at, because it would have been nice if we would have had our market survey done and we'd have a little bit more data to base this decision on. But what I did do is through Mountain States, or CML, one of the two, Judy was able to pull communities that have this. And so looking at some of the comparables, 40 to 45 as a beginning range does fit in. When I look at our internal equity and some of the positions that are right below the department head level and require some expertise, it definitely, the 45 definitely fits in right at that level.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Jan?
Yeah, Heather, would this potential HR person need help, like a staff for him or herself?
Michaela and I have talked about this, and we realize that sometimes people are sick or need to take vacations. So we would need to do some cross-training to make sure that the functions still continue. But some of these duties I would still keep at my level as well, as far as working with the managers and department heads and those types of things. And thankfully, a lot of my background has been in the HR side. On some of the clerical, on paperwork and those types of things, we would make sure Michaela's cross-trained and that we're able to absorb these items. I will say we need to go from our paper files to electronic files. My recommendation would be is to bring on an intern for that period of time to make the transition, to get those from the paper into electronic files. That would be the larger of the workload items.
Thank you, Heather. That was a, go ahead.
Heather, are you going to hire internal, or is this going to be a position that's going to be open? You're going to put it out to the public?
I'm a big believer in competition and making sure that you get the best candidate that's available. So I would be advertising, and so anyone locally or internally could apply, or within the community or region that could apply.
I know you talked about, Heather, putting this in this year's budget. Is that something we can fit in easily, or is there some manipulating that has to happen if we did this position before the end of the budget year?
If we do the 45,000, normally the total cost, you take a 20% increase because of benefits and everything, so that's around 54,000 annual cost. By the time we get done with these other vacancies and then begin the process for this, we're probably only looking at 6 months at the most of that, so it would be half of that amount. With working with Amanda, we could do a budget adjustment, and that's when council would have to actually vote on the budget adjustment, but we could fit it into this year's budget.
Thank you. Just a comment to council. We've talked about this for 3 or 4 years that I remember, and putting it on a list and color coding, it just pops out to me a little bit, some of the things we're missing. And I'm really not comfortable with some of the stuff we're not getting covered right now, or we're doing it at a minimal level. Judy's done a terrific job, and with her leaving, this probably would be the time to pull the trigger in my mind. It just looks like there's a whole bunch of stuff on this list that we're not doing that we should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. Ty?
Yeah, Heather, thank you for sharing this information. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the way I'm understanding everything, but it appears that once you're able to remove some of the functions, the 40% from Sharon duties and the 60% from Judy's duties now, not only will that HR person come in and do those things, but it will also free up your existing staff to be more efficient in the things that they're doing right now as well. So the overall benefit for this person is great for the city as a whole.
And I think that's a great point that I didn't capture at all, is the additional duties the clerk's office would be able to accomplish and the efficiencies we could see in that office as well. That's a very good point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Heather, I think that Rusty's absolutely right. We've been looking at this issue and this problem for quite a while, and I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to fill the voids and move on. So, Council, what are your wishes?
Yeah, is this something, Eric, that we need a motion, or do they have to bring more information once you put it all together?
I don't think you need a motion at all. Heather indicated that she wanted your direction on this, and
Sure.
I think she's probably got it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, Charlie, I took a quick look at the charter and at the ordinances to answer your question, and there would need to be no change there. The charter actually is pretty minimal. It says the city clerk shall authenticate signatures and record a permanent book of all of council's actions and perform other duties as assigned by council or the city manager. So
Exactly.
that core duty would remain unaffected, and the ordinances are very similar, so nothing needs to change there.
Yeah.
The clerk has been loaded up with all of this other stuff
Yeah.
over time, none of which is in the charter or the ordinances.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. So, Heather, I believe you have direction from council.
Yes, thank you. This helps us know that for the current vacancy that we're heading in the right direction. And then what I'll probably do in the next month or two is bring back before you a budget amendment to look at moving that forward. But again, we wouldn't start this process until we get through the public works and the police chief positions.
Thank you, Heather. Council, we'll move on, and I guess it's Heather again with Community Corrections Update.
So this is a bit of a bittersweet meeting. It's my last time I'm going to be tag teaming with Chief Dodd. It's his last meeting, but I won't make too big of a deal out of it because then he'll get grumpy at me. But we've had several discussions with staff and some of the council members, and then we broadened that to include the county commissioners. And once we felt we had a handle on what we even thought the issues were, we began to initiate meetings with the Community Corrections Board. And for a bit of a history, if you look at the item that was a handout, and we've always just called it the one-pager, but it provides a little bit of an overview of why Craig and the public safety crew, and then now the city itself, has concerns with what's going on. And essentially, what we've tried to be clear on is that we believe in the philosophy of community corrections, which is that for offenders to be successful after coming out of jail and to rehabilitate them and to make the transition into society, we need to help with that transition. Part of what we started to become concerned about was the growth that our local community correction center was seeing, from in both the number of beds, but also the number of out-of-district offenders we were taking. And what we were worried about in regards to the number of beds